Well, a very good afternoon to everyone, and for those of you who have been on sessions earlier, welcome back. For those of you joining us for the first time today, welcome to the MACH 22 preview week and our last session for today, which is on supply chain and innovation and is being delivered by High Speed 2. My name is James Fudge. I'm head of events at the Manufacturing Technologies Association. I've got my own company name there. And throughout this presentation, you can ask questions using the chat function, which is located on the right-hand side of my screen. Might be in a different place for you guys. But if you want to pop questions in there, then after the presentation, I'll be relaying those to our speaker. Which brings me very neatly on to our speaker today, who is Alan Mitchell, who is the Head of Innovation at HS2. His department is responsible for driving new ideas, technologies, techniques and practices across the programme. Innovation at HS2 manage a portfolio of high-value projects with the aim of creating significant value to the programme and lasting innovation relevancy to the UK. Prior to joining the programme, Howard was Head of Innovation and Business Development at a major automotive technical centre in the UK, solving innovation challenges in transportation. But before I hand over to him, we have a very quick video from Alan Cook, who is the Chairman of HS2. Fingers crossed with technology, this will now play.
Hi everybody, my name's Alan. Undoubtedly we are living and operating in unprecedented times, very challenging times that are actually going to create for us serious challenges to the way that we work, the way we live. And of course, when we talk about living and working in these challenging times, how we do things together is going to be really, really important. So what I want to talk about very briefly today is about how we actually work together in terms of building HS2 and providing us with a system, a railway system for the next generation. When we talk about the way that we work in terms of teams, we are relying not only on the people who actually work for us within HS2, but we're relying upon our supply chain, our partners, the people who actually are responsible for working with us to deliver the programme. HS2 is in full swing. On phase 1, we're actually in construction. Phase 2A, we're waiting for royal assent, which we anticipate very, very soon. And on phase 2B, Western Link and indeed the eastern side, we are waiting for the publication of the integrated rail plan, which will help us to establish the links that we need to help us to connect all of the UK. In terms of HS2, what we are delivering will be a sustainable railway system, which will improve connectivity within the UK, not just between London and Birmingham, but actually into Manchester, into Liverpool, into Leeds, into Newcastle, and further north into Scotland. So improving the connectivity and helping us to level up the economy, which the Prime Minister and the government are so keen that we should do so. We're also trying to improve, or going to improve, the capacity of the railway network within the UK, so that we can provide a much more efficient mode of transport for passengers, for business people, for freight in the system that we have. We're also looking at HS2 being the most carbon efficient mode of transport, not only within the UK, but actually within Europe. And finally, we're looking at creating not only jobs within the UK, across the UK, but also careers. Those 4 C's, connectivity, capacity, carbon efficiency and careers, are really, really fundamental for how HS2 is going to be successful. It is going to be the next generation of transport within the UK, and we're very proud of that. But if we're going to achieve all of our objectives, all the things that we want to achieve, in the things that I've spoken about previously, we have to look at ways in which we can deliver differently and better than what we've delivered before. And that means fully utilizing innovation across the program. Innovation within HS2, innovation in our supply chain, innovation within the partner teams that are working so closely with us. So these are the things that we need to do differently in terms of the processes, the materials that we use, the skills that we apply, how we actually pull things together to deliver on our commitments to the government and the UK taxpayer. So innovation is at the heart of what we do and how we will do things differently. It is fundamentally important to the characteristic of HS2, and we need that sort of level of innovation to help us to achieve our objectives. It is fundamentally important to what we do.
Great stuff, and huge thanks to Alan for recording that, especially for this session. I will now, as I mentioned earlier, hand over to Howard, who will run us through some of the supply chain and innovations with regards to HS2. So Howard, over to you.
Thanks, James, and thanks very much for the opportunity to come and speak at this event. Alan's words there sort of run true with all of the things that I'd like to share today about how important innovation is in terms of major infrastructure projects and why it goes beyond technology. And innovation is really a team sport. It is the whole of the ecosystem pulling together in order to deliver the long-lasting changes required to deliver some of these fantastic benefits. So I will just share my screen with everybody. So hopefully everybody can now see that. Apologies, we're started. Within innovation at HS2, we talk about not driving innovation or ideas just as a content-based discussion or a technology-based discussion, but actually by using the scale of our program to create an environment. And the environment for innovation is infinitely more powerful than driving a specific technology or a specific project. That environment allows continual or perpetual innovation and new ideas to be brought into the program, evaluated, and have a clear pathway to commercial viability, and not just focused on very specific topics. Actually, what we start to do is create a series of different factors and partners within that environment that creates a very clear ecosystem that becomes catalytic. So it doesn't matter if we're talking about off-site construction or additive manufactured components for the railway, or even digital. It shouldn't really matter. It's the environment in which we establish that allows us to become the most innovative program within the UK. So in order to do that, we looked to some of the other areas where innovation has been particularly effective, and this perpetual innovation and the cluster effect has happened. The largest and best known by all people generally is Silicon Valley. And this is not the only one, but it's certainly the best known. And there are 5 elements that drive the economy of the Silicon Valley cluster. And those different elements all working together across a supply chain are what drive this perpetual innovation cycle. So if you bear with me for a while, I'll talk a little bit about history and how Silicon Valley established itself to be such a dominant force within the world of innovation. Over time, the US policies and US desire to put a man on the moon, as well as some of the political policies between Russia and the US, drove a huge need for innovation. It was it created a long-term government and private sector collaboration in order to continue to develop new ideas. Why this is really important is having that certainty attracts investment. So knowing that you're wanting to put a man on the moon allows a number of people to not only dream, but also put those new entrepreneurial ideas into action and start to develop those ideas, knowing that for a decade they will still be a market for some of these things. And whether that's the Cold War or the Apollo program, it creates a nice pillar to the innovation cluster. The next area you need is progressive corporate partners. And these are larger organizations that understand that things change over time and that they need to cannibalize their existing models. So great companies in this space who have been able to change, such as IBM, GE, Lockheed, etc., and recognize that new markets are emerging and they want to be part of that and are willing to invest in research and development and also change the way that they work and not just rely on the cash cows of previous years. The next sector in the light blue below the progressive corporates there is a strong academic environment, and having a strong academic environment drives your intellectual and human capital. New people coming into traditional academic environments like to drive new ideas, develop new things, and change. This provides two great things. One, world-class people to go and work in either the government sector or the progressive corporates, but also intellectual property that can be spun out into the entrepreneurial space. The green section represents the entrepreneurial community, and there's a direct link there between the academia, where you have this melting pot of ideas and individuals that are unburdened by large amounts of corporate risk or traditional thinking. They're not looking to create incremental improvement as the larger corporates are. They're looking to disrupt and change the world. And this environment is really important, especially in the construction industry in which we find ourselves, because there hasn't really been a major disruptive event in terms of innovation that you may have seen in other areas, such as some of the digital areas or even consumer goods. So we don't have the Amazon effect in construction because we have a very physical nature of our work, meaning, well, 9 times out of 10, you can't put groundworks into the cloud. Bridge design is still requires a physical delivery of a structure that needs to stand for hundreds of years. So there are some barriers to major disruption within our sector, but also it's particularly fragmented. And then the final area in the purple there is the lifeblood that drives innovation, and that's investment. And investment in innovation, when you're looking at it at a cluster level, has to be something that flows, something that allows people to try new things and fail. There will always be winners and losers in investment, and that's the common understanding, certainly in the Silicon Valley world, where you have a huge amount of corporate venture capital, that some of these bets will fail. In fact, more than 50% of these new ideas may wither on the vine, whether it's bad technology or bad business. However, a few of them will go on to change the world. So these 5 factors all came together in and around the Bay Area in California. This created a self-perpetuating innovation cluster that became arguably the most powerful innovation cluster in the world. And it's the interaction between all of those factors that allowed it to become so successful. When I say successful, I'm talking about incredibly successful. So this one area of the US, judging by 27 GDP numbers, is the 19th largest economy in the world. That is just one area of California. It continues to change. So back to my previous statements, it hasn't just rested on its laurels, but the interaction of new ideas, investors looking for new investments to be made, and corporates looking to change the way that they work as organizations, creates this perpetual hunt for the next big thing, whether that's software as a service or platform-based business, silicon chips, or actually social media. The Silicon Valley cluster continues to find the new things, commercialize them, and then look on to new things. That in itself is really powerful, and it's the most important part of that is you have these 5 key elements working together, because if you remove one from the structure, it stops flowing. So if I look at construction as an economic principle, well, actually, if you go to some of the recent literature in terms of changes in growth of output within the construction sector, we are due some significant uplifts in terms of not just productivity, but innovation. So when we compare manufacturing or the UK economy, year on year, construction doesn't make gains that we see in other areas. And if we just relate that to the government major project portfolio, you have around £214 billion worth of investment across 34 projects. This is a very, very significant investment on the government's behalf. However, we are not optimizing or always working as a team in order to drive efficiency benefits. So just to put that into further context, it's well known major projects quite often overrun, and actually they overrun significantly. Things like time is money is a real, really true adage in the industry in which HS2 operates. Certainly, if you look at those numbers, a 30% overrun of your original estimates equates to £64 billion to the UK economy. So there's some really chunky challenges for us to run at as a sector, and certainly the HS2 environment is one of those areas where we can identify and deliver some significant innovation gains. So to equate my world to the story that I've told, how are we in HS2 actually using the knowledge from this approach in order to drive innovation? Well, firstly, the piece at the top, the Apollo program equivalent. We are a very significant publicly funded initiative and the largest infrastructure project in Europe, and we will be around for a long time. So we provide great opportunity to take early stage ideas, work with them in an unparalleled environment to test those ideas, prove them out, and then also over time grow those organizations or ideas within a program that will be being built for the next decade. We have a world-class supply chain. So currently within phase 1 of our program, we have many world-class companies that are actually not only designing, but we actually are now working on the ground delivering this program. We're creating tunnels through some of the most challenging landscape that has ever been done anywhere, and we're working with world leaders to develop new technologies, not only in terms of efficiency, but certainly in terms of safety and carbon reduction. So we have the first two bases of that innovation cluster in place. Within the last 12 to 18 months, the innovation program here at HS2 has been working hard to establish and create clear relationships with the UK academic and research environment. That's important because what we need to be able to do is not only drive new ideas, but test old ideas that we've had and we've now sort of de-risked and we want to put into the public domain or commission within the project. We need to be very quick and agile in the way that we do that. So what we've tried to do is reduce the barriers when it comes to time and procurement, meaning that we create framework relationships with the major bodies that allow us to access multiple universities together, whether that's the UK Rail Innovation Network or its equivalent in civil engineering. And we're also doing a lot of work with the Centre for Smart Infrastructure at Cambridge, amongst a few. We move into the next space, which is the green area, which is establishing an entrepreneurial environment. And this is something that has not always come across very strongly in this sector. We have a lot of great companies that want to work with us, but they are quite small and maybe get lost in such a big program. So we established an accelerator program earlier in the year, and we have 10 companies that have now joined us that wouldn't normally get the airtime within such a big program or with our supply chain. So we're bridging that gap, and we want to work not only with the key partners that we see in the tier 1 contract, but also some of the 5-6 people companies that are trying to disrupt and change the world. And that's been really successful because as the client, one of the things we can do is start to work and understand the value, but then give visibility to some of these organizations across the HS2 landscape, meaning it doesn't come up through just one of our joint venture partners. It will come through, if we are sharing those ideas top down, we can share that across all of the contracts and you get a much better uptake, which is really very attractive, not just for the smaller startup company, but it gets to market much quicker, which is much more efficient for us as a program. We're also a very instrumental member of the I3P organization, which lifts up innovation to another level. If we're proving some interesting projects, and I'll talk about a few of them shortly, within our environment, within HS2, there's a very good chance that other client bodies such as Highways England or Network Rail, certainly the Environment Agency or Sellafield, would be interested in those. So whether that is off-site manufacturing for structures, new approaches to concrete, cement, or reinforcing. All of these things, if they work for us, it's very logical that it would work for other clients within the sector. And the I3P environment is a truly cross-representation of our industry, allowing us to share those ideas and information. The final part on my diagram is around funding. Within the program, I have lines of funding to prime smaller scale innovation and prove concepts quickly. We like to fail fast and put money to work in the right areas, and our board are aware and comfortable with the fact that some of these ideas may not be fully appropriate once we have proven those concepts, but those ideas that we have been successful with are already yielding significant savings across the program. We're also working with a number of different UK government organisations in order to drive further funding into innovation within the sector, whether that's exampled by our recent SBRI competition, where with UK Research and Innovation. We're doing a lot of work with the Manufacturing Technology Centre, where we are evaluating new technologies, working with them to develop rollout plans beyond, not just within, but also beyond the program. And we also work very closely with the Connected Places Catapult to understand, in many instances, where the ideas from other areas can be filtered into our program, and vice versa. We also, for example, have our demo day tomorrow for our accelerator, and because of the scale of the program, we've been able to secure interest from a lot of venture capital or finance organizations that want to go and work with some of our accelerator companies now. Whilst we don't have any it's an open invite for people to attend that session, and we have no direct relationship between ourselves and the accelerator companies. It's great that we're actually using the scale of the program in order to drive those entrepreneurial companies to get new finance and to move things forward. So that's what we're up to in HS2. And if I drop down into a little bit now of some of the key projects, some of the bits that I think people will be interested in. Two key areas that I'd like to share with you. The first is we are just about to click go on one of these projects, and this just gives an indication of the scale and how quickly things can move. Traditionally, we love a good acronym in construction. So NRMM stands for non-road mobile machinery. So as one of the largest construction projects in Europe, we certainly have our fair share of plant that is needed on our sites. As emissions regulations change and plant becomes dirtier or less efficient, it's very expensive because you have to replace plant, but also it's not just the like-for-like replacement of plant, it is the delay that it causes by swapping out or changing things in what is a very complicated and large schedule. And as those regulations change, certainly when it comes to air quality regulations, it doesn't affect the ability of the plant to do its work. It just actually means that it's not compliant with some of the environmental regulations in terms of direct emissions. That is a great thing, that we're doing the right thing, not only by the environment, but also the people operating that and not exposing them to those levels of emissions. However, where possible, we are investigating and working with various bodies across the supply chain to understand how we can retrofit technology, meaning that we don't have major supply chain interruptions by moving a piece of plant that could be 2 to 3 years old, but is no longer compliant with new emissions. And actually we use retrofit technology, amine scrubbing technology, to make it compliant and let it continue to work, and not have an impact either on the environment or the operators around it. It's a very simple innovation. It's been done elsewhere. However, the scale of our program means that we can create this to be almost a de facto standard. We're now, we worked with King's College and one of our progressive corporate partners, Costain Skanska joint venture, in order to evaluate this. We're also now evaluating this across the Balfour Beatty Vongshi supply chain partner, who will be looking to implement, as well as the providers of the technology. So that in itself is a very simple innovation, but actually when you start to multiply these things at the scale of HS2, it becomes a de facto standard for construction. A little bit more of a further focused one. Saga is the name of the company that we're working in that space, and that is where we're starting to actually use artificial intelligence to bridge the gap between some visual analytics using a camera to close down the gap that we see between the design of our groundworks within the program and the actual behavior of the physical environment. And so what we can start to do as we move through that program is take constant visual analytics, run advanced artificial intelligence algorithms on it, and get a much better understanding of the behavior of the groundworks that on which we're working with. That in itself is brilliant, because if we've got a greater degree of certainty of when something like ground heave will happen, it means we can plan accordingly and be much more efficient with our time. And on a program of this scale, being efficient with time is the key to creating very good savings. And so we're starting to work more and more with some of these great university on artificial intelligence based and digital technologies, and implementing them in the real construction environment. And a lot of the time we're doing that in a conjunction with a university, a Mainwork Civils partner, and then also a startup. If I just go on to our piece with on academia, I've already alluded to this, so I won't go on for it too much. However, through 3 of our main academic partnerships, we start and can implement work within days rather than months with almost 30 universities across the United Kingdom, and start to build a knowledge economy around our program. This is one of the key footprints that we leave behind after our program is complete, and that is, at present, if you're going to design and implement a high-speed railway, you jump on a plane and go to China or Spain. Actually, in a few years, the UK should be the epicenter of the knowledge economy around high-speed rail and construction. And this goes a long way to providing not just the funding that's necessary, but the unique environment that HS2 provides in order for those academics to study, learn, and develop new things. The accelerator piece, I've already alluded to. We have 10 small UK-based startups that are really looking to shake up our program. And we look at that across a number of different challenge areas. They're not just in the construction environment. We're also looking in the end-to-end customer experience. We're doing some great work there with a small company called Cloud Cycle on the circular economy, where we're actually just reducing the waste and picking up some of the low-hanging fruit where in our sector we haven't addressed some of the things that we can use technology to improve the amount of successful slump tests for concrete, for example. Using drone type technology rather than sending the foreman down to the bottom of the site in terrible weather is a much more effective way of getting a good and accurate picture of your operating environment, putting less people at risk, and you can do one drone pass over large expanses of ground that can then be used by multiple people, rather than sending several people to look at the same thing but with a slightly different perspective. With Nature Metrics and Dendra, we're using new technology like DNA sampling to get a better view of the biodiversity of the areas in which we operate and adjacent to the railway. So for a long time, we've been going out and doing physical surveys for a number of both flora and fauna. The likes of these companies allow us to be more effective and get many, many more data points in the way that we're working. That's just to name a few, and we're working on this accelerator program with the Connected Places Catapult and also Innovation Birmingham. So the Innovation Birmingham is allowing us to level up the innovation community within Birmingham. And I think it was recently just stated on LinkedIn, the vast majority of all of the startups within the accelerator come from outside of the Southeast corridor. So we're trying to level up and drive forward opportunities across the route, not just in the southeast of the UK. The final piece on funding I've alluded to already, and I think we continue to work very well across the UK government bodies, and we have a demo day tomorrow, and we also will be announcing our Innovate UK competition. And we have a concept called gearing within the programme, and that is the innovation managers in the team not only have funds at their disposal for your innovation ideas if you bring them to our programme, but actually we work for those ideas to try and get them additional funding from other sources. So whether that's we sponsor and try and get these great new ideas, some additional funding from an Innovate UK competition, or we work with our supply chain to co-fund those, that's where we really can add a tremendous amount of value to the product or innovation development that you start to see. So I think the current statistics are around probably 40 pence on the pound for my innovation managers, meaning if I invest on an innovation project with an organisation, we usually manage to secure at least 40 pence for every pound that I put in. That sometimes just gives you a little bit more edge in the projects that you deliver. I think on that, I've pretty much fulfilled my sort of 30 minutes, and I will hand back to James.
Howard, that's great. Thank you very much for that. That's really appreciated. Really interesting to hear about how you're working with the startups and the 10 you've got based at the centre. I mean, a lot of our members and exhibitors at the show, as well as visitors, work right the way across the manufacturing technology spectrum. So it could be from measurement and inspection, it could be additive, it could be metal cutting, forming, robotics, automation. How do those engineering companies, who are quite often SMEs, engage with HS2? So do they need to go through your joint venture partnerships? Do they need to go through bidding on projects, competitions? How can they get involved?
So it's a great question. With a couple of different answers, but we're increasing the ability for those organizations to do that. With the concept, so things like additive manufacturing, we obviously have a huge amount of things, and slab track being a particularly big one at the moment, which I'm sure a lot of people will be aware of. We actively seek ideas in that space, and we want people to come to us directly. So that's whether that's to me at Innovate at HS2. You can access me via the HS2 website. We run a number of public challenges, and those challenges will come over time. We have challenges within, I suppose, the manufacturing technology world coming within this year. In implementation of those ideas, so if an idea is accepted and it is successful, we will deliver it via the supply chain. So then we'll find you the appropriate partner. However, we still have a great degree of selection of those ideas. And if they are smaller and more disruptive organizations, the accelerator is a way to work directly with us. And so future cohorts of the accelerator will have different challenges, and I would ask people to just keep your eyes peeled, and if it fits with what you do, put in an application to the accelerator, meaning that you get all of the benefit of being one of the HS2 companies.
Sure, and I appreciate there's been a lot, obviously, with regards to infrastructure, but are there any particular areas that are coming on next? Is it the operating system for the whole of the network, or maybe the trains themselves? Is there anything that's going to be sort of next on the line?
So 2021's key areas, so rail systems are very important at the moment. So a lot of our railway systems infrastructure we're looking for great ideas from. As I mentioned, slab track rail, anything steel based. We are doing a large piece coming up soon on reinforcing structures. because traditionally that's done with molded reinforcing bar, but actually if you take that into the future, should we actually be having almost sometimes bespoke reinforcing steel structures that are that allow us to use less. For example, if we can use less concrete, the carbon savings and mass savings are huge. So those are sort of very, very much coming up the priority list. And then in other areas, we work quite closely with the West Coast partner on things like depot systems, train cleaning. We're just starting to work on a piece that's looking at how do you optimize the operation of the rail permanently, so that actually you may be using more robotic automation for things, not only cleaning, but things like servicing of vehicles and things.
Sure. One of the questions that's just come through says, it's excellent that skill development is key, including apprentices, which will enrich UK engineering. But post-project, is there a process whereby that talent will be redeployed? I don't know if you've got a view on that, on how that's going to function.
I don't know. There is a huge program of apprentices within. I have 2 innovation graduates within my organisation as well, and we're sort of training them up to be business developers and entrepreneurs. The length of the program is such that we got notice to proceed last March, April time, and we have multiple phases of the program. So as Alan mentioned, we're underway with phase 1, which will take several years, and then we also have the subsequent phases of the rail. So at the moment, I'm sure HR have a plan for that, but they haven't shared that with me yet.
Sure, no, I understand. Well, we have currently covered off all questions, so unless there's anything else you particularly wanted to add, I'm not going to draw this out for the full hour as such. Just a huge thank you, Howard, for joining us today. It's been really appreciated and really good to get an insight. And it'll be really good to see HS2 at MACH next April. I know you guys have got a stand there, so thank you very much. For anyone that wants to view this webinar again, the recording will be on the website over the next few weeks. We'll be sending details of that out. A reminder that we do have one more session tomorrow on decarbonisation, which is with Stephen Jeffers from Siemens. And I do encourage you all to take a look at the A to Z on our website to see the exhibitors that will be present at the show. As well, you can view HS2's page on there and a bit more information. Quick reminder, there will be a feedback form that pops up at the end of this session. If you can take 2 minutes, it's just really good to guide us in terms of the next couple of sessions we've got coming up, as well as ahead of the physical event next April. But again, I will say thank you very much to Howard and wish you all a very good rest of the day. Thanks very much. Cheers.